This is James Randi, and you're listening to The Skeptic Zone.
Welcome to The Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to The Skeptic Zone for the 5th of February, show number 68. Richard Saunders here with you once again. On today's show, we have an interview by Kylie Sturgis with Professor Chris French from the UK. What an interesting man he is, investigating the paranormal, the supernatural, the unexplained. That's followed by some highlights from the Mystery Investigator Show, the show for schools, where Dr. Rachie and I travel around and do a stage show teaching science. I hope you'll find that interesting. After that, we have a brief report about the 1023 campaign by Kylie Sturgis. And, of course, that's followed by Dr. Rachie Reports. Now, before we get into the show, there's a few things I guess I need to cover. As mentioned last week on the Think Tank, the Happy Jihad House of Pancakes site, which is hjhop.blogspot.com, was kind enough to nominate one day last week as International Dr. Rachie Day. That blog is worth checking out. Congratulations to Rebecca Watson from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe for appearing on Robert Llewellyn's Carpool interview show. It's a really great show. It's certainly worth checking out at www.llewtube.com. Fascinating guests including Ben Goldacre and Sir Patrick Stewart. Another thing worth checking out online is the new videos by Captain Disillusion, and you can check him out at youtube.com/user/Captain Disillusion. Great videos, great fun. Many thanks to listener Paul McGowan, who sent us the Cosmos DVD set, which we're probably going to auction a bit later. Might get somebody very famous to sign that, and we'll see how we go. And thank you, too, to those wonderful people who sent in large donations to the Skeptic Zone in the last week. Much appreciated, and certainly helps us keep the show on air, or online, or whatever you want to say. And finally, if you haven't voted already, you can still vote, in the next few hours, I think anyway, for Dr. Rachie in the Shorty Awards. She's leading as I record this. Head for shortyawards.com/category/health. A vote for Dr. Rachie is a vote for science and reason. Okay, enough about that. Let's get on to this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone.
I'm Kylie Sturgis, and I'm talking to Professor Christopher French. Professor Christopher French is a psychologist and vocal skeptic, specialising in the psychology of paranormal beliefs and experiences, cognition and emotion. He is currently the Professor of Psychology at Goldsmiths College, University of London, and is head of their Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit, which he founded in the year 2000. He is also the co-editor of the Skeptic UK magazine with Lindsay Kalis. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us about anomalistic psychology and how does it differ from parapsychology?
Well, basically, what anomalistic psychology focuses on is starting from the working hypothesis that paranormal forces don't exist. Are there other ways that we could explain ostensibly paranormal experiences? Now, I mean, it's important to point out that we're not saying that we know paranormal forces don't exist. We're just saying that given that the wider scientific community isn't convinced by the evidence that's been put forward by parapsychologists, then is it possible that we can explain the weird experiences that people have when they think they're experiencing telepathy, or they've seen a ghost, or they've seen a UFO, or whatever else it may be? Can we explain those things in other terms? And typically, we're talking about in psychological terms. So we're actually starting, as I say, from the working assumption that paranormal forces don't exist. Now, most parapsychologists put most of their effort into trying to prove that paranormal forces do exist. Again, what you find in practice is that at the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit, we do spend some of our time doing parapsychology. We do test psychics. We always get negative results. We do test psychic claims. And again, we've never produced any positive results. But we do think it's important to be open-minded in approaching these things. And some parapsychologists are very interested in the kind of cognitive illusions where people believe that something paranormal's happened even when it hasn't. So it's more a matter of emphasis than anything else. But if I had to bet my house, I would bet my house that paranormal forces don't exist. And therefore, as a psychologist, I'm really interested in why so many people think they do.
So what led you to become interested in this particular aspect of psychology anyway? This has been going on for quite some time, the work that you're doing with the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit, hasn't it?
It has. I first started at Goldsmiths in 1985. And at the time I should say, by the way, I've not always been a skeptic. I mean, when I was a teenager and even when I was going through university as an undergraduate, I actually tended to believe in most of this stuff. And for the reasons I think that most people do. I'd read the books, I'd seen the films, I'd had the occasional spooky experience myself, and it just it seemed to me more sensible to believe that these things really did exist than they didn't. It was only when I read one particular book, it was Jim Alcock's Parapsychology, Science or Magic, when I was doing my PhD, that suddenly I kind of realized there was another way of looking at all these things. And that was the early 80s. As I say, I started at Goldsmiths in 85. And initially I just did a couple of lectures from a very skeptical point of view on parapsychology. And the students obviously really enjoyed it, whether they were believers or skeptics themselves. People do find these kinds of topics really interesting and fun to talk about. And it wasn't until 1995 that I actually realized I was really very interested in this stuff and I could put on a whole course. So I now do a final year option as part of our BSc psychology program on anomalistic psychology. And increasingly the research that I was doing was in that area. And eventually it really became my kind of prime focus of interest. And so it was a kind of fairly gradual thing. What started off as a kind of side interest and a hobby, I just realised that I just found it fascinating, and I still do. So it's good.
I've noticed that the research unit is very proactive when it comes to lectures and outreach. I get regular email updates all the time. Has it influenced numbers of students taking courses in the subject?
I think there's certainly been a tremendous increase in the kind of general skeptical movement in the UK over about the last 2 years. And it's hard to say exactly what's caused that. I think you can speculate that a number of factors were important. And I think Richard Dawkins, God Delusion and Christopher Hitchens and people like that have made it much more acceptable for atheists to actually express their atheism. I think the fact that groups like Skeptics in the Pub, Skeptics in the Pub have been going now for over 10 years, but certainly over the last couple of years, not only has the Skeptics in the Pub group in London been so successful that now they regularly, every month, draw in well over 200 people, and they've had to introduce a booking system. But also there are branches of Skeptics in the Pub springing up all over the country. There's well over a dozen in different cities up and down the UK now. So, there's definitely kind of something in the air over here. Now, again, I wouldn't like to claim that anomalistic psychology is the only reason people get into skepticism, but I think it's played a part. One of the things I'm most excited about is that as from this year, on the psychology A level that's taken by kids in school from 16 to 18, one of the three options that they have is anomalistic psychology. And that's just absolutely fantastic. It's going to be thousands of kids every year who are going to be reading about anomalistic psychology and thinking, wow, that stuff's really interesting, wanting to do it at university. And so I think it'll have ripple effects that more and more universities will actually start to put on courses like this. So at the moment, there's a handful of them down the country, but every year you hear about another 2 or 3 places that are putting on a course like this. Because I say, the students find it really interesting. It teaches you some very interesting things about human psychology, and it's also just a great way of teaching critical thinking that applies beyond the realms of just the paranormal, but to all kinds of other areas, whether you're assessing alternative medicines or any other kind of controversial claim that's out there, then you need those critical thinking skills.
I remember that the news of the course was reported in your column in The Guardian. That has been a recent opportunity, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got a column. I only do a column for the online science page, but it still reaches a kind of quite a wide audience. And again, it's just a great way of being able to get the message out there. I mean, it was quite interesting when I actually wrote the piece on the introduction of anomalistic psychology into schools. I thought it was a very innocent, unprovocative little piece, but clearly lots of people found it. It was amazing. If you read some of the comments that I got on that from people who clearly had not actually bothered to read past the first couple of sentences and the nice picture of Uri Geller holding a bent spoon, and they were up in arms about it, which is kind of interesting that this kind of topic, whether you're talking to people who do believe in it or people who don't believe in it, it arouses such emotion in people. And as I say, I was quite taken aback by some of the comments that were there, presumably from people who actually saw themselves as being very scientific and very skeptical, but even then did not think that anything like this should ever be taught in schools, which again, I think is a quite ridiculous position to take. The point is that opinion poll after opinion poll shows that the majority of the population, in one way or another, do express belief in the paranormal. Most people in any survey will endorse at least one paranormal claim. Now, either that means that paranormal forces really do exist, or it's telling us something really interesting about human psychology. So either way, we should definitely take these kinds of claims seriously and try to understand what's going on.
Do you think that perhaps it points the way for people interested in the course to produce resources?
Oh, I think definitely. I think there's already, as you will know, quite a lot of good quality skeptical literature out there. It's just that for a long time, it's not been very obvious where it was. I think, speaking from personal experience, as I said to you, when I read my first skeptical book and my eyes were opened, Jim Alcott's got a lot to answer for, then there were lots of references in the back of his book to this publication called The Skeptical Inquirer, which I'd never heard of before in my life. And I started to subscribe to that and then realised that there were lots of other publications. There were books out there. There was this guy who, again, I'd never really heard of at the time, called James Randi. And he'd written some books on Uri Geller and a book called Flim Flam. And suddenly, you kind of got your hands on this stuff, and it was just such a joy to read, you know. But I think these days, I think the kind of skeptical literature is a bit more out there. But still, if you walk into your average bookshop on the high street, you will find shelf after shelf after shelf of pro-paranormal, new age nonsense, and maybe a couple of little books tucked away here and there that actually take a critical approach, that are more skeptical. But the tide is very, very slowly turning, I'd say. I mean, again, mentioning Richard Dawkins, I think the fact that his book was a bestseller and that other people have been able to follow up on that, Ben Goldacre's Bad Science and various others, there are signs that things are slowly beginning to change.
We touched briefly upon skeptical activism, and I've recently had the opportunity to talk to the Merseyside Skeptics and their 1023 campaign. Has there been much of a relationship of skepticism to consumer affairs in the UK? I think that's something that's beginning to happen more. There's the 1023 campaign, which is fantastic. And there was also, you'll know that Simon Singh is being sued by the British Chiropractic Association. And this actually led to a couple of people in the UK. Simon Perry, for example, who runs the Leicester branch of Skeptics in the Pub, decided that it would be a good idea to write a little bit of software that would look on all the websites
for the members of the British Chiropractic Association. And if they mentioned the word colic and claimed that to be treating colic, then he looked up the local trading standards office, and there was basically a letter campaign, which was I helped out with this. I sent a batch of letters myself, and it was very easy to send out, I think it was well over 80 letters, and just basically saying these people are making claims that they can't substantiate, actually using the kind of trade descriptions legislation to attack these people. And basically, it's been a very, very successful campaign. Lots of them have had to stop making those claims on their websites and in their literature. And now they know that people are kind of watching them and taking note of what they're saying and challenging them. And I think this has got to be a good thing. The British Chiropractic Association, in taking the action they took against Simon Singh, I think they've really shot themselves in the foot, because so many people in this country, and again, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in this country, lots of people thought that chiropractic was actually a legitimate part of conventional medicine. They didn't realise that it was actually had a large amount of woo in there. And so by actually bringing this to the fore, and people are now talking about the kind of the claims and the underlying theories, and they realise that actually there's no evidence to support a lot of these claims. And so they've really got a lot of very bad publicity from their point of view. And I'm very pleased about that. It serves them right.
I think we have a very similar attitude over here in Australia towards the chiropractic profession. We had Simon Singh do a short tour where he went to Adelaide and Sydney. We were very fortunate to have him present for the Australian Skeptics. I guess what we have now is not only an overlap with consumer affairs awareness, but also science communication. Has there been much consultation with formal science communication bodies in the UK?
Well, again, there are... things have tended to kind of grow, if you like, kind of fairly kind of organically to this point. And things are getting kind of much more organised these days. Thanks to the internet, it's much easier to kind of have organised campaigns and have networks and so on and so forth. And that's very much a feature of scepticism in the UK at the moment. There are groups, as you know, Sense About Science, who are organising, amongst other activities, they have organised a campaign in support of Simon Singh. One of the things that's happened there recently is that the Sense About Science campaign against the libel laws, and particularly the way the libel laws are having an effect on science communication, but they've now joined forces with two other groups who are also campaigning against the very, very unfair English libel laws. That's English Pen, who represent the literary world, and Index on Censorship. So now there's a very, very strong coalition there with a huge array of very big names. Jonathan Ross, Stephen Fry, Dara O'Brien, all these people coming together, lots of MPs, cross-party support, and there is a real chance that they may actually have a lasting effect on getting the English libel laws reformed. Now, that would be a fantastic achievement. And again, from the point of view of people in the world of science, it's the way that people like Simon Singh and Peter Wilmshurst, who is also a victim of these very unfair libel laws, the way they've been treated has drawn people's attention to the fact that there is this big problem in the UK insofar as scientists are sometimes quite cautious about what they'll actually put into writing and what they'll say in lectures. And that's not the way science is supposed to work. And so I think, the campaign in itself is obviously just a very, very just campaign with implications beyond just the world of science. But I think it also has been very useful insofar as it actually highlights the way science works, that science is all about putting ideas up there, having them criticised, testing them against the evidence and trying to refine your theories and produce better ideas and letting the evidence speak rather than any kind of appeals to authority or to divine truth or whatever else it may be.
I think the support for scepticism that's being shown in the UK, particularly the intersection of pop culture, particularly comedy, I've noticed. The comedians getting behind politics and science. It's been...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. That's actually been amazing that, we've got your Tim Minchin, who is a complete genius. And that is just such an effective way of getting skepticism across as well. And we've also, we've got Dara O'Brien, and Stephen Fry, for a long time, people have known that he's a card-carrying skeptic. Robin Ince is doing a fantastic job in terms of organising these events. I'm sure you've heard about the 9 lessons and carols for godless people shows that he organises around Christmas here.
It would be lovely if it came touring to Australia, or if maybe we had someone inspired to do something similar here. So, yeah.
It's absolutely great. And you go along to these things. And one of the nice things about it is the sense of community, because for a long time, I think that was something that religious people had, but skeptics and atheists and humanists maybe didn't so much. And it's nice to go along to these events and think, these are your kind of people. These are people who, by no means, obviously, as I'm sure you will know, you don't find that skeptics all sing from the same song sheet. They're an opinionated bunch, but they love a good argument. But it's all about it's all done in the sense of just enjoying that debate and recognising that kind of trying to take a rational approach to things is the best way forward. And it's nice in those kind of situations, particularly at a comedy show, to actually, to enjoy yourself and to actually feel that you are part of a larger community. And as I said, there's a big sense over here that things are happening. The people have got behind the Simon Singh campaign. There are various other campaigns that are taking off, some of which you've mentioned. And just generally, there is a real buzz about skepticism in the UK at the moment.
Yeah. I think this intersection is reflected in the recent relaunch of the UK Skeptic magazine.
Well, again, that's another case in point. The magazine's been going for over 20 years. And for a lot of that time, it just kind of chugged along. And we had a hard core of loyal readers. But there was this kind of sense that things were right in the UK now to try and kind of take it to the next level. So what we've done is we've expanded it. We've gone from 28 pages to 40 pages. And we've got lots of new columnists in. We've got we've put together an editorial advisory board that's just to die for, basically. We've got a couple of Aussies on there. We've got Tim Minchin and Karen Stoltz now. We've got Stephen Fry. We've got Robin Ince. We've got Richard Dawkins. Richard Wiseman, Simon Singh. The list goes on and on and on. Elizabeth Loftus. There's, all these people that. When we got in touch with them, one of the things that was really, very nice and rewarding was their enthusiasm. It wasn't just a matter of, for most of them, it wasn't a matter of just saying, "Oh yes, I'll have my name attached to your magazine." It was, what can I do to help? And that was just great. So we've got this kind of fantastic resource there now that we can draw on, and people, getting people like that we can ask to write articles for the magazine. And it's just going from strength to strength, so it's all good.
So people can subscribe to the new UK Skeptic magazine by heading to your official site. You've also worked on the Haunt Project and on a Richard Dawkins documentary. What other research are you currently working upon?
There's lots going on at the moment. Recently, we've actually been doing lots of work looking at the relationship between memory distortion and belief in the paranormal. I did some work with Chrissy Wilson, who since has gone to Oz.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Chrissy Wilson becoming quite a part of the Sydney skeptic scene, I've noticed. She's moved from the University of Tasmania up to New South Wales, so hopefully we get to hear her more on our show, yes.
Yep. Well, again, Chrissy did some interesting work while she was at Goldsmiths in the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit, looking at the relationship between susceptibility to false memories and belief in the paranormal. And it turns out that we suspected that this would be the case on previous literature, but we actually directly tested the idea that people who were more prone to false memories would also be more likely to believe in the paranormal and to report paranormal experiences. And we did experiments that actually did support that hypothesis. We want to try and carry on and do further work in that area. I'm working on a book on anomalistic psychology. That's being co-written with a colleague, Anna Stone, at the University of East London. We've just recently finished editing a collection of the best of the skeptic. This is a book called Why Statues Weep.
Yes.
And that should be appearing within the next couple of months. We're actually now at the kind of proofreading stage on that one. So there's just so much going on. It's just trying to, I could do with finding a way to get, say, 48, 72 hours in a day. That would be good. That would help.
Brilliant. Oh, one of the things that probably this is just related to my own research, you recently investigated contributing factors to conspiracy theory belief was one of the papers I wrote to you about.
Yeah.
Has there been any development on that front?
We've not done anything else since what we did a TV program, myself and a colleague at Royal Holloway. It was a program for Channel 4 on belief in conspiracy theories, and it was a nice way for us to actually be able to collect some real data. Now, since then, my colleague has said that he would write this up and turn it into a proper paper, and it's just not happened yet. And again, I know how difficult it is to find the time because I'm just as bad myself.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of research done via project students, and I've got a very good project student at the moment who's wanting to look at some of the kind of cognitive factors that might be involved in belief in conspiracy theories. It's a really good area because it's under-researched.
Oh, it is. Yes.
There's not very much out there, and what little bit there is, you can kind of you can get on top of that. You feel you know what literature's there. I mean, some of the other topics that you might want to do research on, you realise there are hundreds of papers, and it's a bit daunting. But something like this, I mean, and obviously it's a very, very relevant issue at the moment. I mean, there are so many different aspects to belief in conspiracy theories, lots of which have got kind of serious real life implications. When people buy into these kind of mindsets, they can end up taking on some very, very weird values in the process, I think.
It was 3 of the items on the survey that Dr. Martin Bridgestock and I did. By the time I had finished looking for my lit review at the conspiracy theory papers, I was really pleased to notice that there was a growth in new papers coming out. But yes, very, very recent, yeah.
That's right, yeah. I mean, there's Karen Douglas at Kent University as well. She's done some interesting work.
And she's an Australian as well, I've noticed.
Yes. So, yeah, you get everywhere, don't you?
We do.
You really do.
It's excellent.
I think my current co-editor is Canadian, but the one before that was Australian. So the Skeptics kind of, we like a bit of Aussie input here and there.
Yeah, the networking is important for all of us, I think. Yeah.
No, I think so, quite definitely. Yeah, I mean that's one of the good things. Obviously, again, to state the bleeding obvious. I mean, the internet has just kind of completely revolutionized things. It's just so easy now to do podcasts, to do research, collaborative research with people around the other side of the planet. And it's just, once things that would have been so difficult to organize are just, so much easier these days.
So if people want to find out more about the UK Skeptics and the various projects that are going on, which website should they head to?
I think the first, the main two, for the Skeptic magazine and for stuff related to the Skeptic magazine, then it's www.skeptic.org.uk, skeptic with a K, not surprisingly. And for the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit, that's www.goldsmiths.ac.uk/APRU. And there's a lot of our papers and what have you are downloadable from that site if people want to find out what's happening.
Marvellous. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, all right, guys. I was talking to Richard Saunders the other day.
All right.
He said if we record a trailer for our podcast, Skeptics with a K, he'd play it on their show.
Well, that's nice of him. That's very generous.
It's pretty good. I'm not sure what we could do, though. I mean...
Well, I suppose you tell people what the show's about.
But it's basically just this.
Yeah, but we talk about science and skepticism and things.
That's true. I suppose you mentioned the website address.
What, merseysideskeptics.org.uk?
Yeah, or just like search us on iTunes. Oh, and then we could end with like a big song like The Skeptics with a K podcast.
No. Don't do that.
For 7 years now, it's been my pleasure to be part of the Mystery Investigators show for schools. Originally with Alinda Brown, and now with Dr. Rachie Dunlop, we visit schools and perform our Mystery Investigators show, where we explore the paranormal, the supernatural, the strange, and the mysterious. It's such an important part of what I do in skepticism, Dr. Rachie too. I thought you might like to hear a little bit of the show. We performed at Abbottsley School for Girls just this week, and here are a few highlights. We start off with good old-fashioned spoon bending. One more time. Okay, thank you, Tess. Now it's my turn. Just hold still. That's all right. Thank you very much. I'll get you to hold this other one too, nice and high. What I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to do something. I'm going to try and use the power of my mind, and with all your help, of course, to make this metal in the spoon melt in my hands. Just by using a couple of fingers. So hold it like that for me, please. Like that. And you're going to help me. Everybody concentrate on the spoon, and I want you all to think as loudly as you can the word bend. Can you do that for me? A practice. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Bend. Think as loudly as you can. You're getting there. 1, 2, 3. Oh, very good. All right. Here we go. So I'll get you to hold your spoon up. Everyone think bend. And I'm going to try and give you a bit of an optical illusion. Let's see if we can make it look like this is... Yes? Other hand. You like it? Wiggle at the bottom. See how that looks like it's getting wiggly? Yours too? What? Some people really do think that looks like it's getting wiggly. Are you all thinking bend? There we go. Of course it's not. It's just a trick. It's an optical illusion because metal doesn't... Oh, wait a second. Last time I did that, everybody applauded. For being a brave volunteer, you get to keep a broken spoon. Well done. And a minty. So, we are the Mystery Investigators. A quick introduction for you all. We have in the show today Dr. Rachie Dunlop. Dr. Rachie is a real scientist working in heart medicine at the Heart Institute Research. There she is doing real science, and the work that she does helps discover all about heart disease and makes our lives a whole lot better. She works very hard at that. Now, who remembers a couple of years ago there was a funny show on TV about looking for Australia's best psychic? Did anybody watch it? Yeah, you remember that? It was called The One. Now, do you remember there was that goofball on it, that silly guy who was the skeptic? The judge? You remember him? That was me. Yeah, somebody recognised me out there. That's nice. There I am doing the show. What we're going to do in the show today is talk about this sort of things. The strange and the mysterious. Now, I must also say that joining us today in the show as our assistant all the way from London is Dr. Chrissy. We're going to be nice to Dr. Chrissy. She's going to be handing out some minties. Go on, hand one out. Go on. Isn't she nice? Thank you, Dr. Krishnan. So there you are. If you pay attention to the show, and what we say, you might get a meeting. Oh yes. One of the main points we try to make in the show is to do with testimonials and anecdotes. We have a whole routine where I come out with some juggling balls and, hear it for yourself.
Now, Richard, sometimes you might hear people tell you that they read something written about a product that says it was good and it worked for me, and that it's called a testimonial. And we should always ask questions about that. If someone has a claim about something, you should always ask for evidence. Now, my friend here, Dr. Richard,
Doctor?
He says...
Doctor, are you promoting me?
No, sorry, just Richard. Now, he gave me this the other day. He emailed this to me and he said that, as you can see up here, it says that he can juggle 3 tennis balls. Now, this is from the Melbourne Street Performers Academy, Richard, and they sound like a pretty reputable organisation, don't they?
That's good, that's good.
Yeah, it says, it's signed by Fred Merck. He's the principal of the Melbourne Street Performers. Well, no, you're right, it isn't signed. It's just written there, it's not signed. But it does say you can juggle 3 tennis balls. Now,
yes.
I think that's enough for me to realise that you can juggle 3 tennis balls.
Well, it would be, but press that button and you'll discover. Look at that.
I see, there's another one. Now, this is from your scout leader, isn't it? Saying that...
A good scout leader I used to know.
A very good scout leader saying that you can also juggle 3 tennis balls. So then I'm pretty convinced that you can juggle 3 tennis balls. I don't think we need to do this.
Well, press it one more time.
There's another one?
There's another one.
Well, this is from the Justice of the Peace. Now, they're really important people, and they say that you can juggle 3 tennis balls as well. So, I think that's enough evidence, guys. What do you think? We don't need to see any more.
In fact,
there's no more proof is needed. What do you think?
Ladies, I can juggle 3 tennis balls. What do you think about that?
I believe him. I don't think we need to see anything. What are you saying? Show you?
You believe me, don't you?
You want him to show you? Really? But he had all those things and said he could do it.
All right, you lot. You want me to show you? All right, look. See, I can do it. You want to see it?
Well, I think you better show it, Richard.
3 tennis balls?
So there you go. It is true. So that means that everything you read is true, doesn't
Absolutely.
it, Richard?
Thank you. Absolutely.
Hang on, there's one more that I saw the other day that you sent to me. Now this one is about you being able to juggle 5 tennis balls. 5 tennis balls.
I believe it.
You believe it? Yeah, I believe it too, because it's the same person who said he could juggle 3, and he can, so it must be true, right? I think, yeah. Oh, and here's another one from the same scout leader who says he can juggle 5. Now I'm hearing someone say that they're old letters as well.
That's all right, I'm old too. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe they're out of date. I don't know, I think they're pretty good. I believe it. I mean, he said he could juggle 3 and he did, so I think... Yeah, that's it. We don't...
I really, because look, it said I could juggle 3. The testimonials, absolutely right. You all saw I could juggle 3. There's no point in showing you 5 because you all know I can do it.
Yeah.
You want me to do it?
You guys are tough. Really?
Really?
Yeah, I think, they want you to show that you can do it.
5 tennis
They want the
balls.
evidence.
The evidence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Richard Saunders.
Oh, thank you.
Now, isn't that interesting? You said you could juggle 5 tennis balls, And we had bits of paper that said you could juggle 5 tennis balls, but it turns out that you can't do that.
But I could juggle 3.
Yes, but I think that's evidence that we need to ask for proof, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. It really doesn't matter what's written on a piece of paper. If you have any serious doubts, it's your right to ask for more proof, like you did with me. If you see something, it looks amazing, and someone says, it's true, look, it's written on this piece of paper, or it's written on the internet. We say, take it with a pinch of salt. Always be ready to ask for more evidence if you really want to. Very important, I think, Dr. Very important. All right. Throughout the show, we hand out astrology reports for the kids. At the end of the show, we sort of collect the scores. Helping us with this section was Dr. Chrissy Wilson. Was it 6? That's 6? Okay. 6.
Aries is 6, Taurus is 6.
Yeah.
Well, what was yours?
I'll probably be like around. I'll do the next one actually.
That's all. Well, who's our Gemini, by the
Who
way?
is Gemini?
Who's Gemini?
Up the back. What would you give yours out of 10?
7?
7. Okay. Yeah.
Cancer.
Oh yeah.
What would you give yours? How well did it describe you? 100%. 10 out of 10. Well done.
Leo.
Where's our Leo?
Yeah, I did mine probably about 9.5.
9.5 for Leo. That's good. So our astrologer is doing better now. What about the Virgo? Who had Virgo?
Yeah, like 9.5.
9.5. Well, that's good. Libra? Where's our Libra? What would you score yours? 8? Oh, good. Yeah. Scorpio? 9.5. Capricorn? Where's our Capricorn? Yeah? 8? 10. Wow. Aquarius? 9 for Aquarius, Dr. Chrissy. And our Pisces? Where's our Pisces? 9.5. Wow. So only a very few of you thought that they weren't very good. So our astrologer's not doing too badly. What do you know?
I think they're all the same because if you get, like, say the Johnny girlfriend, if you get every single one of them and just read them all, they're all practically the same. They're just
I tell you what, I think you might be onto something. Dr. Chrissy, could you just read out the first part of your one, and those who have the paper, have a look.
Okay, this is my special reading that the psychic gave me, okay? While at times you have serious doubts as to whether you have made the right decision or done the right thing, you are disciplined and controlled on the outside.
Hang on, I'm getting giggles. What's going on? It's the same?
It's the same? No, it can't be. Let me do some more. You tend to be worrisome and insecure on the inside. Your basic intuitions usually prove right, and you are an excellent judge of character. Your sense of humour is notable.
Hang on. Are you saying that they're all the same? Thank you, Dr. Chrissy. Very DME. Who reads their astrology in the newspaper? Every time we ask a question, it's less people now.
Yeah, but this lady down the front was spot on because she said that if you mix up the Cosmopolitan and the Dolly star signs, they're all the same. Is that what you said?
They're all like if you read every single one of them, they're all basically the same. Just change the word.
So they could apply to you.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, spot on.
In all the years that scientists have been seriously studying the claims of astrologers, we've discovered that there's really nothing in it. It's good fun, it's great to read your star sign and have a giggle, but as far as we know, the planets and the stars can't really influence your lives the way that astrologers say they can. Every teenager's life, I think you're right. However, there is a real science called astronomy. And astronomy... Did I get an applause for astronomy?
Yeah.
That's... If you want real magic and real wonder and real beauty, then astronomy is for you. Because unlike astrology, astronomy can really take us to the planets and the stars. Some of you may know where this is. quick. That really is a lovely panorama from the surface of planet Mars. We, using science, have visited other planets, and we're going to be visiting other stars in our universe. Ladies, that's where science can take us. That's why we love science so much, and it's been our pleasure to perform for you today. So I'd like to thank Dr. Raichi and all the way from London, our assistant today, Dr. Chrissy. Otherwise known as Dr. Raichi. And again, you've been a wonderful audience, and thank you very much. So that's the Mystery Investigators show for schools. www.mysteryinvestigators.com. You can also find us performing at the Australian Museum in Science Week and at the ABC building here in Sydney.
The Boom Effect is an auction in action for Sonic Boom's future, started by a group of podcasters and writers as a way for these communities to show support for the Morris family. T. Morris is a beloved founding father of the podcasting community. He is the co-creator of podaudiobooks.com, writer of 4 social media books, and the first novelist to serialise his novel. On the 5th of January 2010, T found himself facing raising his daughter with the alias of Sonic Boom, alone, after the sudden, shocking death of his wife Natalie. If you head to the official site at theboomeffect.org, you'll find a variety of auction items. Amongst them is a box of skeptical goodness donated by the Skeptic Zone and the Token Skeptic podcasts. In there you'll find signed photos by Skeptic Zone podcasters Richard Saunders and Dr. Rachel Dunlop, and other items including region-free DVDs of Tim Minchin, the Interrobang album by George Hrub, Tim Tams, Mustics, and the latest book by Dr. Karl Kruszenitsky. At 10:23 a.m. on January the 30th on UK time, more than 300 homeopathy skeptics nationwide took part in a mass homeopathic overdose in protest at Boots' continued endorsement and sale of homeopathic remedies, and in order to raise public awareness about the fact that homeopathic remedies have nothing in them. Consumer rights activists took part in the protests on that day, culminating in a mass homeopathic overdose taking place in city centres across the world. Here's some of the reactions that we got when we were taking part as Skeptic Zone members, both Richard Saunders and myself, in Sydney, New South Wales, and in Perth, Western Australia.
Well, here we are. It's the 1023 campaign in Sydney, Australia. We're outside a real pharmacy. We just bought packets and packets of homeopathic sleeping tablets. Sleeping tablets, my friend. Well done, everybody. Hey!
The people here at Perth Skeptics in the Pub are committing suicide. We'd like to thank the 1023 event for making this possible.
These actually taste good. Good.
Yeah?
They taste okay. Yeah, I'd buy them just for the taste.
This is a dilution of 30C.
Yeah.
That means 1 molecule of arsenic per 80 million Earth volumes of filler.
Oh my God.
So far, I'm not feeling any death coming on.
I can tell you one thing about death, it is fatal. Yeah. managed to ingest quite a lot. How are we feeling?
I agree, the sugar rush is nice.
Okay, great sugar rush. How are you feeling?
Awesome, tasty, they're good.
I'm eating them very slowly, very slowly.
You know, I spent $15 on a whole packet of these. You better be enjoying them.
Still wide awake, unfortunately, but we'll see.
Okay.
Still awake.
Still awake, no effects whatsoever. Delicious. Yummy. And in fact, sugar taste. Love that sugar taste, yeah.
Could use some wedges.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think I should have just brought you jelly beans and it could have had the same impact? Yeah.
Ask us something
I
else.
got flavouring in. There's no flavouring. That's the trouble.
Oh.
Here we go.
Give people flavouring to it. Down the hatch.
Woohoo! Yummy.
Oh, went down the wrong way.
Oh.
There is not much more we can say to make a point. Homeopathy has nothing in it.
The 1023 event was only just the beginning of an awareness campaign about homeopathy and how there's nothing in it. You can find out more and discover about ongoing efforts at 1023.org.uk.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this very special edition of Dr. Rachie Reports. This week I give you a roundup of news from a huge week in science and skepticism, with some very big events restoring my faith in the world, well, for a short time anyway. One such event was announced to me by the bad astronomer Phil Plait when he passed on the good news about an e-newsletter sent by the Australian Vaccination Network. The headline screamed, "AVN to close its doors at the end of the month." And the contents explained that after 17 years, the President Merrill Dorey was tendering my resignation as president of this great organisation and moving on to the next stage of my own personal development as mother, wife, activist and researcher. The reasons she cited were primarily monetary. She described the stress of not knowing when money to cover wages and bills would come in, and that she was stepping down to spend more time with her family. She said, "I am getting older. My children have missed out on so much so I could run the AVN, and at this stage in my existence, I need to be able to work on this subject and still have a life." Then came the irony. Quote, "Without a large injection of capital behind me, I simply cannot continue." She used the word injection. Ms. Dorey, you do amuse. So the upshot, was that she is broke, and the future of the AVN was grim unless, quote, "a benefactor or series of benefactors come forward to establish a fund that would guarantee the AVN's existence for at least the next 2 to 3 years." This is not the first time Ms. Dorey has asked for money from her members. A few months ago, she was asking people to put aside a percentage of their government-paid family allowance to donate to the AVN. The day following this e-newsletter, Ms. Dorey sent another e-newsletter clarifying that the AVN would only close if she did not receive the required funds, and she was sorry if she had worried her followers. This clarification became somewhat clouded today, however, when she sent yet another e-newsletter with the masthead exclaiming, "Living Wisdom AVN closing down sale." This e-newsletter detailed that all their educational material would be on sale for the next 3 weeks, after which time they would be closing down. So is she or isn't she? One has to wonder, however, why she is asking her supporters for an injection of cash. Why haven't the big guys come to the table, the likes of Generation Rescue and Age of Autism? Perhaps they see a flailing company as not a very good investment. On top of this, her reputation has received a battering over the last 12 months. At last count, there were 2 pending complaints lodged with the New South Wales Healthcare Complaints Commission. There were also 2 with the Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing, the charity watchdog, one accusing her of operating without a charity licence for 2 years. She was also awarded the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award for being a threat to public health. And she has been forced to change seminar venues when organisers discovered the true nature of her information. And not to mention, she has taken a battering in the press for spreading false statistics and scaremongering about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I think this might be the beginning of the end for the embattled AVN. And I, for one, won't miss him. Not at all. Also this week, the General Medical Council in the United Kingdom handed down their findings about the conduct of controversial MMR Dr. Andrew Wakefield. On January 28, after the lengthiest case in history, the leading anti-vaccination proponent Dr. Andrew Wakefield was found to be dishonest, irresponsible, and guilty of putting children through painful and unnecessary tests. This included subjecting children to lumbar punctures or spinal taps and colonoscopies. Wakefield also collected blood samples for his control studies at his son's birthday party and later laughed about how children had vomited and fainted after he took their blood and then paid them £5. The history of this story goes back to 1998, when The Lancet published a paper by Wakefield and others outlining research which supposedly found a link between MMR, or measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and autism. The upshot of the release of Wakefield's findings was a great deal of media coverage outlining the supposed dangers of MMR leading to autism in children. These findings were immediately picked up by anti-vaccination groups as evidence of the dangers of vaccination. What has been described as panic ensued, with vaccination rates immediately dropping in the UK to as low as 50% in some parts of London. And of course, this led to an increase in diseases that MMR was designed to prevent. Even today, vaccination rates have apparently still not fully recovered to the levels before the scare. Yet this research has not been duplicated by others, and most of the co-authors of the paper subsequently dissociated themselves from it in 2004. Yet this seemed to be of no consideration to the anti-vax movement. Their case, as far as they were concerned, was proved. End of story. One of the poster boys of the global anti-vaccination movement, the findings against Wakefield mean there is a strong possibility of him being struck off the medical register. But with the GMC's findings against Wakefield's dishonest and irresponsible practices, the anti-vaccination movement took a heavy blow, as his research has been the foundation of much of its specious argument. The next blow to Wakefield's reputation came from The Lancet itself. On January the 2nd, the prestigious medical journal issued a full retraction of the paper, stating that it has become clear that several elements of the 1998 paper by Wakefield et al. Are incorrect. Therefore, we fully retract this paper from the published record. True to form, the anti-vaccination movement came out in defence of Wakefield, describing him as a martyr to the cause, and Wakefield has been quoted as saying he has no regrets over his work. One correspondent on a forum described the GMC panel as, quote, evil judges from the Garden of Stalin, but it is without doubt that the movement has suffered a serious blow as Wakefield's research underpinned much of its often hysterical argument. As is also true to form for the anti-vaccination movement, they are now crying foul and saying this is a big pharma, big government conspiracy to cover up the truth. One day maybe they'll think of some original arguments. And that's it for the wrap-up of a huge week in science and skepticism. But before I leave you for this week, I'm reminded of the consequences of the anti-vaccination movement worldwide. If it wasn't for scaremongering about the safety and efficacy of vaccines by the likes of Andrew Wakefield and the Australian Vaccination Network, today, on February the 5th, 2010, we would be celebrating the first birthday of Dana McCaffrey, who tragically passed away from pertussis or whooping cough on March 9, 2009. Our thoughts are with the McCaffrey family. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Well, thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone, show number 68 on the 5th of February. Another great show coming up next week. Our special guest will be mentalist and master magician Philippa Scoffey, who's currently touring Australia from the UK. And, of course, we'll have the think tank. So, until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
Skeptic Zone.